G'day guys, Clarky here. Welcome back to the Set of Six podcast. Our first episode after we've launched our Instagram pages and Facebook, which is pretty exciting, right, Oz?
Yeah, definitely. It wasn't yesterday when we were sitting here working through stuff. Well, it was still exciting, but it was tiring, I think I'll say, when we were sitting here yesterday for a few hours working through the content, but we had a good time.
Yeah, no doubt. And so what we actually did, guys, you'll see them at the bottom there, Set of Six NRL Podcast on Facebook and Instagram at setof6.nrl.podcast. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever, pause the podcast now. Go and check out those two social medias. So we're not going to be obviously reporting news or anything like that on there because we do that on our own platforms that you see above our heads every single week. It's all interactive, fun, exciting content that really, with the aim to engage and promote discussion around the game. So I think the pages are going to take off and be pretty special. This week, guys, we're going to talk, can a Sydney team be relocated, yes or no? Should the strip rule be amended or changed? NRL Women's, how do we expand the competition? How soon do we expand the competition? Criticism towards Josh Mcguire, Big Moose, is it warranted or unwarranted? We're going to talk about our winners and losers of 2019. And Tackle 6, we're going to wrap it all up with NRL 360 co-host Paul Kent saying Mad Mondays should be banned. Before that, guys, let's get our fast fire tips for the week. Oz, Thursday night, Sea Eagles, Tigers. Who have you got?
Sea Eagles by 14.
I'm going to go with the Sea Eagles there. They'll be too strong at Lotto Land. Titans versus the Eels.
Eels by 10.
Yeah, I don't see us doing too well there, unfortunately, either. Panthers up against the Broncos at Suncorp.
Panthers by 8.
Yeah, I agree. I think their halves just a little bit too strong. Having two established halves there, Cleary and Maloney against Darius Boyd and Turpin. Turpin, a lot of energy, but Boyd, only 1 metre for one run last week. Not good for a 5'8". Knights v Cowboys down in the Hunter.
Knights by 8.
Agree there. Raiders, tough task. They come up against the Storm at Amy.
Storm by 4+.
I have to agree with that also. Rabbitohs, Bulldogs, ANZ.
Rabbitohs by 6.
I got the Rabbitohs there also. SCG, Roosters here, $1.20 to $4.40 for the Roosters. They're predicting a slaughter. What do you think?
Roosters by 18+. I'd have to agree.
Same. PointsBet Stadium, Sharkies come up against the Dragons at home. Who have you got there?
Sharks by 10+.
Yeah, I think the Sharkies will get that one done pretty comfortably there. All right, let's get on to Tackle 1. Can a Sydney team be relocated, Oz? Yes or no?
Yes, but not for another 20 years or so.
Okay, and which sort of teams would you be looking at, or is it too early to sort of make that prediction?
It is a little bit early. We can speculate. Look, the Sydney teams that we have sort of become accustomed to see be in the rumors at least for relocation. I think mainly the Sharks and the Tigers. I mean, of course, the Roosters get thrown around, but that's more just wishful thinking by some fans.
Too successful, and they've got too much money at the club, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the two teams that I personally hear of the most, at least in the papers, etc., in the media, and it's not like heavy rumors, but it's the Sharks and the Tigers. So if we were talking right now, it'd have to be either of those two.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to say the Sharks. If I had to pick one, I'll be picking the Sharkies just because they can't expand their fan base any further because obviously the Dragons are right there. And further to that, of all the clubs, they probably are the least financially secure. But look, I'm going to say no as well. I understand we had a great crowd at the Central Coast Stadium on the weekend. And everyone, when we get great crowds, seems to go, we've got to relocate there. We've got to build a team there. I agree with the Perth calls after Origin.
Yeah.
I don't agree with this one. Look, the reason they had such a great crowd, Oz, is because the Storm versus the Rabbitohs is a spectacle. If you live on the Central Coast, Gosford, you're going to go to, is it still Blue Tongue Stadium or is it just Central Coast now?
It's just Central Coast now. If I might interject for a second, look at the Roosters-Cowboys game there just a few weeks ago. Why weren't we talking after that one? Oh, because it didn't sell out.
Exactly.
We're just talking about one game. There's been another game there this season that hasn't sold out. So I think we need to take that into account as well.
Absolutely. Like I said, when it's an event to go to in a town that does not regularly have rugby league, we've shown in the past with the Cowboys and Roosters, we can't actually sell it out. It was just because we had two huge heavyweights going head to head. And I just think in 2019, Oz, even 20 years from now, I just don't think we can actually relocate a team. There is simply too many supporters of each team. And the only team that's genuinely been tossed up for relocation in the last couple of years is the Titans.
Yeah.
We're both Titans fans, and I'm sure you'll recall across all Titans fan forums, Facebook groups, Facebook pages, etc., the polls. Will you still support us if we become the Central Coast Bears or the Central Coast Titans or any variant that is not the Gold Coast Titans? And the overwhelming response was, no, I will not support this club. And that's in a market like the Gold Coast that is, secluded up there, one town team. And we're saying that we just couldn't, possibly support someone else. In Sydney, at least, if the Tigers go bust, there's Parramatta 10 minutes down the road, Roosters 30 minutes, etc., etc.
The thing is with that, though, especially with older fans, because they've been grown up to traditionally hate certain teams and support their team, I don't think they're going to switch teams, which is actually a good reason as to why we shouldn't relocate a team. Because if we do, a Sydney team especially, their fan base is not going to then support someone else. No. Let's just say you move the Bulldogs to Perth. Not only are they not going to follow the Bulldogs to Perth, they are then not going to support Parramatta, for example. Traditional rivals. There are still people out there, although the rivalries don't get as hyped up anymore or whatever, there are still plenty of Bulldog supporters and plenty of Eels supporters who were in their prime when the Eels and Bulldogs were going at it and still hate each other. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So, it's a little bit contradicting as well, because the general consensus is there's a market in Perth. There's rugby league fans there. We should relocate someone.
No.
But you said it yourself. There's fans there. They support a rugby league team already because they're fans of rugby league. It took me 3 years to jump on board the Titans, and I guarantee you, we'll use the Bulldogs example like you did. The Perth fans already probably, let's say they're a Para fan. They're not suddenly going to become a Bulldogs fan because they're the Perth Bulldogs now. They're going to be mocked. They're going to be laughed at. And of course, this is all before we factor in travel costs, etc. to Perth. People having to move from the East Coast to the West Coast. So Perth is a tough market. Of all the locations that would be the most feasible and easy, it probably is the Central Coast.
They've got a great for a player.
For a player to move, or a club to move, of any, if it did have to happen, it's really only the Central Coast. If we're talking relocating, if we're talking building a new one, we can build a new club at Perth. I believe we can do that. We can't relocate to Perth. If we have to relocate, has to be the Central Coast, right?
Yeah, but the thing is as well, you know how we are talking about the Cronulla Sharks to relocate. Yes, they're thrown in as a Sydney team, but Cronulla's not in Sydney. It's 2 hours south. You know, well, from at least where I am at Penrith, I've been down the area, Wollongong, Cronulla area. It's 2 hours south. Yeah. So it's still out of this Sydney area, still near it, still out of the Sydney area. And yeah, that honestly just reminded me of that when you were talking about the Central Coast, because if we are talking about relocating a Sydney team, are the Sharks enough? As in, are they still close? And you know what I mean? Are they still a part of Sydney enough that it'll solve some issues? Because I don't know, because they are a bit south. They're not exactly in the CBD. So
absolutely, I think we're both on the same side of the fence here. We both just think it just won't work, will it?
No, and especially the fan uproar. I mean, yes, we don't get huge crowds to rugby league games in Sydney anymore. We still feel like half the stadiums, for the most part, not the big ones, but for the most part still feel at least half the stadiums. But the thing people don't realise is, because there are still fans, from the NSWRL days, still plenty of fans from back then, let's just say we get rid of the Tigers. Okay, we say we're going to either axe or relocate the Tigers. Okay, they might not sell out every home game, but you know what? When it gets to that point, even their supporters that don't go to a game who support the team, they will rally over something this big there will be probably supporters from other teams as well, like we saw with South Sydney.
Yep.
It right now, at least right now, this is why I said maybe in 20 years. Right now, there are still too many supporters of Sydney Rugby League teams that it will be too big of a headache for the NRL to relocate a Sydney team right now. And you know what? With the population growing and expanding, especially here in Sydney as well, that might solve the issue by then in 20 years. So we might not have to, but we'll just wait and see.
I definitely agree with your point on the uproar of fans. That has the potential to really put the game back, potentially even a decade. If you're losing, a loyal fan base or a group of 30,000 people from the game, I'm not sure the NRL can afford that on a financial scale before we get into the other details of that. Let's move on to tackle 2. The strip. In 2019, the one-on-one strip in particular has become very, very popular. Josh Hodgson has 8 or 9 this year, I believe, if I'm correct with that stat. It seems, particularly the Raiders, but teams are coaching it. 3 players go in, 2 drop off, ball quickly comes out. What I'm going to ask you in a moment, Oz, is do you agree or disagree with potentially amending that rule? But before I do, I'll get out my piece on it, guys. No, we can't change this. It adds to the unpredictability and the excitement of rugby league. We don't want to watch games where teams complete their sets and put a kick into the corner or put a grubber in and try to get a repeat set, might go dead, might get a repeat set, and they sort of continue this. Every single time the ball got stripped in the Raiders versus Roosters game, I was cheering. I was like, yes, here we go. Something could happen. It was unpredictable. It was great. And look, we've seen this happen in history. Every time in rugby league, a team gets good at something, everyone else goes, we've got to change it. We've got to change this rule. We've got to change this, that, this, whatever. And then eventually, everyone just jumps on board and starts doing it also. When the Melbourne Storm started wrestling in the ruck, guys, all we heard was, we need to stop this. This is ruining the game. Now everyone wrestles in the ruck. It's going to be the same with the one-on-one strip, guys. Eventually, everyone is going to start trying one-on-one strips. That's my take on it, though. What do you think, Oz?
I agree with you 150%. I know that's not possible. It's more of an expression. And from the post we actually put up last night on the Set of Six podcast, Facebook and Instagram pages, for what I saw at least, most people agree with us. And, I can see why. I mean, we've had one-on-one strips in the game for years. We've had this rule for years, but, as soon as things start to become more prominent, they start to become more of an issue, don't they?
Exactly.
This is really the only reason. It's always been there. It's just because we are seeing one-on-one strips more often, people are calling it into question, which, why are you doing it now? But why weren't you doing it 10 years ago when one-on-one strips were still a rule?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I think
that's the best point you made. If it was such an issue, why weren't we talking about it 10 years ago when one-on-one strips were still exactly legal like they are now? It's only because it's become an issue that the whole sort of discussion point has actually even come up about it. But look, I'm a fan of it. Anytime rugby league becomes more unpredictable and exciting, I'm happy. And the Raiders versus Roosters game was exciting. They were stripping the ball off each other, one every 5 sets. It was, I found it entertaining. Did you find it entertaining?
I did find it entertaining, but the one thing I can say to possibly teams who believe that we should get rid of the one-on-one strip rule because the ball's being stripped from them too much, here's a tip. Maybe learn to hold on to the ball a bit better.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all you have to do to stop it. Just hold on to the ball.
Yeah, it's one of those things like they're trying to stop it happening at the second scale, when if you look at it from the first, if you hold the ball secure, the one-on-one strip isn't a thing.
It's not going to happen.
Although, some of the ones the Raiders were pulling off were ultra cheeky. I think there was Papali, Whitehead in. They both went boom, and all of a sudden Hodgson just ripped it out. But I suppose as a player, you have to be conscious. If you feel players dropping off, grip that ball
wrap
a
around
little bit tighter. So we're both in agreement here. We both like the strip rule as it is. No changes required.
Yeah, and just learn to hold on to the ball.
Perfect. Let's move on to tackle 3, NRL Women's. How do we carefully expand this competition, Oliver? Because there are cases in sports, particularly the AFL and rugby union, where they've expanded far too quickly, and I think as a game we need to learn off that. Let's do this, for example. The Queensland women's team versus the Queensland's Victoria team in rugby union. obviously a little bit more of a prominent sport in Queensland. So what would you expect that result to be? And, what would you think? What would you think?
So, wait, sorry, I don't really watch too much women's rugby union. Is there actually a Queensland Victoria team?
Right, so one is based out of, one was called the Victorian something, and the Queensland, I believe, was the Queensland Reds.
Okay.
So just a bit of background. Queensland, a little bit more of a rugby state. What would you expect that result to be?
I'd say Queensland 60-something to 4. I don't know, like a pretty big scoreline.
Not this big, though. 112-0.
Okay.
There's simply, and this is no disrespect to the women, it's simply because rugby league for women has only really taken off in the past decade or so. There's simply not a big enough player pool. If we expand too quickly, that level of competition will drop back. It won't be as entertaining as it currently is, because it's currently great. And then the interest will start to lack off. They'll become more reliant on clubs for funds. And eventually all the NRL clubs, I think the Roosters, Broncos, Warriors, and Dragons have a team. They will eventually be like, hey, we're not getting any value for our money here. In fact, we're losing a lot of money. We can't keep doing this. And there goes the NRL Women's game. They have to be so careful, Oz. So how do you think they do it? How soon do you think we expand? Give us your take on all things NRL Women expansion.
Well, the thing is, I actually disagree to an extent. I actually think we should have started out with more teams. And I think this is because due to the entertainment value. Think of it. How can you become this is even forgetting that not every fan base has a women's team, right? There's only 4 at the moment. It is very hard to become invested, and I would like to make this very clear. I'm not saying because they're women. If it was blokes, I'd feel the exact same. It's very hard to become invested in a league with 4 teams where they play each other once and then there's a grand final. It's like a month-long season.
I agree.
Especially... when the Sydney Roosters in the final round had not won a single game, yet managed to win a game, and that gets them to the grand final. There should not be a league in existence where you lose. I'm acting like they lost like 10 games in a row. They lost their first 2 games. It's a 3-game regular season. There should not be a situation in a league, a professional sporting league, where you don't win a game the whole season, and then you win your last game and get into the grand final. You know what I mean?
I agree. And these are honest truths. And people can cry sexism or whatever, but it's the honest truth. It wouldn't matter if it was goats, females, robots, males, transgenders, Donald Trump's playing there. The opinion would be the same here, guys. Yeah. And I almost thought it was a little bit disrespectful. Brittany Brayley got a women's Dally M when they only play 3 games in the regular season. I don't know. I just thought that was disrespectful to Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, who played superb for 25 weeks in a row in comparison.
Yeah. It just doesn't feel like a legitimate league. So I think I agree with your points, and I think that's why the NRL had the reduced number of teams. But very soon there has to be more teams added. There just has to be. Otherwise, the interest will fall off a cliff for a different reason, not because of financial issues and the smaller talent pool, but because it's just not an entertaining league to watch. Because it's like, okay, for 3 weeks, and then oh look, the team who didn't win a game all year is in the grand final, or just won 1 game. You know what I mean? It needs to be a better structure. I think. Well, what they can do at least right now, I think, is out of the 4 teams, they play each other twice. I'd like to see that. That would definitely be an improvement, and they're able to do that without adding teams too fast. However, I think very soon we need to.
End of this season, how many teams do you add and why?
2.
I agree. Where do you think we should add those teams from?
Well, let's have a quick think. We got a team in Sydney, team in Brisbane, team in New Zealand, a team. The Dragons are sort of another Sydney team, sort of South Coast. I think Melbourne for one.
I think Raiders, bro.
Raiders, okay, yeah.
Probably unpopular because Raiders don't get huge crowds, but in the women's BBL Big Bash, there's a Canberra team. There's not a men's team in the BBL, but those crowds at the women's one, it's a good spectacle. And Canberra as a whole is a boring place. I really think the people here would get around a women's Raiders team. Yeah,
just to add to that as well, in the W League, I think it is the second in terms of quality of players, the second best league in the world, the Australian Women's Soccer League, there's a Canberra team, but there's not a Canberra A-League team. So the women are doing pretty good in Canberra. So I do agree with that. It brings into as well, it's a market that has not been touched by the women's game yet. That's sort of what I was thinking of. So I do agree with Canberra. Absolutely. I think maybe Canberra and Melbourne.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Look, I definitely agree. They need to expand. I think, too, we can't do too much expansion because the talent pool just isn't wide enough right now. And,
but the thing...
You go.
Sorry to interrupt, but that's like... We got to sort of think that's like any league when they start out.
Exactly.
Really, like, back in 1908, there were a few players who converted from rugby union.
Yep.
But there would have been a lot of players who were originally rugby players that didn't get a chance in the professional rugby league. So these amateurs, and, they were playing NSWRL. And, I think if we compare, of course, it's hard to compare because the game's changed. But I think if we look at, if we could the players from then to the players from now, I would speculate that right now we have a larger talent pool. And I think it would show in those early days. So sometimes in the early cop it for a little bit. To an extent, not too much, where we've got 16 teams and only 4 of them are quality. But you know what I mean? I think we can have a little bit of leeway whilst we build the women's game in Australia in terms of talent, in terms of learning, the skills and getting better at it. Because I think there's already been an improvement in the women's game, but we can go a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what I mean? And look, it's not even just women's. It's, I just thought of this then. The 8th Immortal, Andrew Johns, has actually called for the NRL to have its number of teams reduced because he doesn't think the male talent pool is deep enough, which is certainly very interesting. He said a couple of teams a lot of teams have a lot of reserve grade players, etc., etc. And I think when he's saying about it, the male game, in some ways it does validate my opinion that the female pool is not large enough at this stage. Let's move on to tackle 4, Josh Mcguire. His 3rd alleged eye gouge of 2019 Oz, and people aren't happy. To the point where he's received death threats, which I would say is too far. But I'm going to jump on my Instagram here. I'm going to bring up a quote from his partner. Now, she said, "See this guy right here. He's a footy player. He's playing football for a living. He provides for his family through doing so. He's also a dad to 2 beautiful children and a loyal, caring husband. He's a son-in-law, brother, and incredibly good friend to many. He's also a human and has feelings like you and I. Of late, he has been receiving death threat upon death threat, countless threats of the most unspeakable things. Mental health is constantly being spoken about within the NRL, and yet what I am witnessing is the absolute bashing of a man who can only take so much before that thick skin starts to soften. Not only from the fans, but from most media outlets and personalities as well. I am beyond sickened and disappointing, and I've witnessed more than enough moment of sadness for me to not make a stand and have a voice on this. It needs to change. I love you, Josh Mcguire, 90. Now, first of all, a little bit irrelevant again. This seems to always happen, right? Player gets into strife. Their family members come out with, he's a great husband, he's a great this. We saw it with George Burgess. After his eye gouge, subsequent, look, it's irrelevant. Yes, he's a good father. He still stuck his fingers in someone's eyes and could have permanently damaged his eyesight.
That doesn't warrant death threats.
Though. No, and that's what I'll get to. Look, the death threats are definitely over the top. If you're doing that, what the hell? One, if you say that to a professional rugby league player's face, he's probably going to kill you if you're a normal human being, because we are paid to go and work. He is paid to go and train every single day. So unless you're freaking Conor McGregor saying that, I got no doubt Josh Mcguire would literally kill you. So I just don't understand the whole tough guy sending him death threats. I'm going to kill you, mate, because you eye gouged someone on my team. No, you're not. You're going to go to a 9-to-5 job and be a loser like the rest of us, while he gets paid $500,000 or more to play rugby league. So take a look at yourself in the mirror and actually just think, what the hell are you doing? What the hell are you doing when you actually send someone death threats on the internet, particularly someone far more successful than you? I don't get that, but I also don't... I get why his wife came out and said that, but a lot of it is just around the bush, beating around the bush, trying to make out, mental health is constantly spoken about within the NRL. Well, I'm sorry, Josh Mcguire's wife, but the NRL are not telling people to send these death threats. That's completely separate to the NRL. They do take mental health seriously, and it's not their fault that people are sending death threats. What do you want them to do about that?
Yeah,
It doesn't make sense.
Especially if they're sending it anonymously. I don't know how he's receiving these death threats, and we don't know to the extent. I mean, death threats are bad, okay? We don't, bottom line, but we don't know to the extent. Maybe the family's mentioned in the death threats. We don't know. So maybe his wife did feel like she should have, did feel the need to come out and say something to sort of soften this blow. And we don't know how it is affecting Josh Mcguire. Personally, from I guess what I've seen from him as a football player, I can see him copying it pretty well, but we don't know. We honestly don't know. So for me personally, I can't really. We can speculate, but we can't. We don't really know too much, so it's hard to go beyond that.
Kind of a case. She's not right, but she's not wrong. At the same time, I definitely don't agree with death threats, but I definitely don't agree with eye gouges at the same time. In her large, soppy paragraph, which does raise a lot of good points, I won't dismiss that at all. She raises a lot of great points in there, a couple of bad ones that I did touch on. She fails to account that her husband was putting his fingers in someone's eyes and potentially permanently damaging his eyesight. Now, I can't remember who the eye gouge was on in particular. Can you?
No, well, there's been a couple, so...
Okay, well, let's say let's give one of the players his eye gouged. Guess what, Oz? He's also a father. He's also a loving husband. He's also a good friend and all this stuff. She's
Family
not right,
has to watch
but
on.
she's not wrong.
Exactly. There's two sides to every story, isn't there? What's stopping the wife of the player who, and again, I forget as well, the player who he stuck his finger in the eye of in the past, what's stopping his wife from commenting on that and saying, well, my husband's got a family too, and he has to provide for them, and he can't do that if he's got one eye.
Absolutely correct. I'm just trying to have a look on my phone to see if I have the image of who it was. Not that it matters hugely, but just for reference. Here we go. Here, I actually can't tell who it was. It looks like potentially David Fafita. Young gun.
Yeah.
Regardless, guys, I highly doubt any NRL players are watching this, but if you're a footy player, under sixes, park grade, A grade, whatever, don't eye gouge people. It's not in the spirit of rugby league. And to wrap it all up, I think we both agree again that his wife is not wrong, but she's not right. She raises some good points, and she completely misses a couple others.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Let's move on to tackle 5 then. Our winners and losers of 2019. Now, obviously, there's a lot of winners this year and a lot of losers, but we've restricted this list to just 3 teams each. Let's start with our winners. My first one, Oz, I've gone with the Canberra Raiders. I was tipping them to finish bottom 4. They hadn't signed Chance-Nickel Klogstad at that stage, but even then I didn't know even he was capable of such a huge season. And if I'm being completely honest, I'd never seen John Bateman play a club game before, only internationals, and I didn't think he was that good. They are my winners.
I've got the Canberra Raiders as well.
Yep.
I hope we haven't got the same winners list. I have a feeling, but it's undisputable. Like, a lot of people had them near the bottom of the ladder. I personally had them 14th, so I had them 3rd last. And I think I even said in my when we talked about our pre-season predictions, I think I even said that they would be in a scrap for the spoon. So they'd finish 14, but they'd be near the bottom.
Yep.
Not a lot of us saw what would happen, with the likes of Bateman and Nickel Klogstad, but it's also been the rest of the side as well. They've been able to close out games that in the past they haven't been. Remember only 12 months ago they were known as the side. They would snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. They'd be leading for 60 minutes and then let a game unravel near the end. They've really fixed that up in 2019. There've been a couple of games where we have seen it. Definitely. However, you could use the game against the Roosters, not to the same extent, but as an example, I guess you could say the game against the Roosters. But they've definitely improved a lot. So the Raiders.
I think their assistant and defensive coach, Brett White, needs to get a big pat on the back because he's transformed that team into a defensive machine. A little bit of a worrying stat for Raiders fans. They are 1-6 against top 6 sides this year, with their only win coming over the Parramatta Eels, who are the 6th team and have shown shades of inconsistency. So a little bit of worry there, I suppose, heading in, and a very tough game this weekend. My next winner, the Melbourne Storm. Now, when I spoke about them in the preseason, I feel like I should almost uppercut myself for this. I said, when they lost Cooper Cronk, we saw Cameron Smith take over a lot of the playmaking role there. He wasn't always a hooker. He became the first receiver. They were still a great team. I said, now they've lost Billy Slater. With Cameron Smith getting older in his career, obviously he can't replace Billy with those sort of attributes. But I said, I just don't... I think that Billy Slater and Cooper Cronk in the span of 3 years is too big of a loss. 2 future immortals, possibly. And I said they'll struggle for that. I said they won't. I said this will be the year where they might fall just outside of that top 4. They might be 5th or 4th. And I was completely wrong. They are my winners because the Melbourne Storm machine just ticks over. They lose Billy Slater. Guess what? They got Scott Drinkwater. They got Jerome Hughes. They got Ryan Pappenhausen. And they got Nico Hines, who we saw last weekend. Wow. I wish I was a Storm fan. I'll finish by saying that. Who's your next winner?
The Manly Sea Eagles. I can't go past the team that I had finishing last at the start of the season. And I still think, although my reasons were wrong, they were still very understandable, I feel. But, they're currently sitting 5th and could finish in the top 4. I don't think they will, but they're still in the fight. Look, at the start of the season, and I think you agreed with me on this, they had a lack of depth. And I say that with air quotes. They had a lack of depth. It's also because this season, and not a lot of people remember now because it was more of a talking point at the start of the season, they actually had salary cap sanctions or restrictions
still applied
for this season.
Still applied as well.
Still right now. So they did have to rely on some of those unknown players. The only thing was those unknown players became Ruben Garrick, Brad Parker, Manassi Fainu, Brendan Elliott as well, Cade Cust, if you want to name him. And I did say in my preseason prediction, I will sort of, cover my ass here a bit, which I did then. I said, if those unknowns turn out to be rising stars, then they might finish above 16th. And I think it's safe to say they won't finish last now. So,
just quickly, Ruben Garrick, do you reckon he could be Rookie of the Year?
I don't think anyone's getting it over Payne Haas. Yeah. Payne Haas is eligible. I know he played last year, but
he only played 3 last year. So
yeah, look, there have been a lot of great rookie seasons. I'd love to see someone like Britton Nakora rock up to Dally M Night with a shirt with the definition of a rookie on it, like Donovan Mitchell did for Ben Simmons in the NBA when he got Rookie of the Year.
Yeah. What did it say?
It had the definition of a rookie. I think it said someone playing their first season of a sport or something, or someone just starting out at something. Because Ben Simmons, he'd obviously got drafted the year before but got injured, so he was still eligible for Rookie of the Year the year after.
Yeah.
But Donovan Mitchell had a really good season, but Ben Simmons still got Rookie of the Year. So I'd love to see, Britton Nakora or a Brenton Aiden or someone, or,
Sherry.
Even a Garrett. Sherry. Who else is there? There's been a great rookie pool.
It really has.
They can all just show up in a blazer, and then the definition of a rookie, and then see what happens when Payne Haas gets it. But I think Payne Haas will get it. Yeah.
My next winner is the Sea Eagles also. Sorry to copy you, mate, but look,
that's all right.
Every single point you brought up there, I have to agree. I don't want to bring them up again, and I'm not sure there's too much else to add. I will say, I think Manly will do very well this final season. Des Hasler has his teams primed every single finals match he's ever been in. I think of the coaches, and I could be incorrect here, guys, don't quote me on this, but I think he probably, besides Bellamy, of all current coaches, would have the highest percentage win rate in the finals. I'm not sure I could Google that information somewhere and find it, but I think he would.
I think they at least make the second round. The only team out of the current teams below them in the top 8 that I think would possibly give them some trouble in the first round, and it depends which side of this team shows up, is the Panthers, maybe. And I emphasise that maybe, but I think that's it. And even then, I in that game, Seagulls versus Panthers, and it would be at Brookvale, I'm backing the Seagulls, right? But I'm saying the only team that I think, go back to 2017, it was the Seagulls versus the Panthers in the finals. The Seagulls literally beat Penrith the week before in the first week of the finals.
Yeah, yep.
The Seagulls were tipped. So we never know, but I just want to say that. I would tip the Seagulls, but, just to sort of, I guess, have an answer to what you're saying is I do think they'll make the second week. It just depends on what Panthers side was to show up. And if we look at the majority of the season, they have had some scrappy victories, one against Manly. So I don't think so. But if there was, maybe I'm talking maybe like a 30%. But yes, Manly.
And just to wrap up, I also had the Eels. I'm not going to speak about them because we did say 3 teams, but wooden spoon to 5th is remarkable. Who was your last winner?
Well, believe it or not, the Parramatta Eels.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah. I mean, from Wooden Spoon, they're now top 8 side. And look, I had them 15th at the start of the season. So, again, sort of like the Seagulls, I can't not call the team that has defied my personal odds to that extent.
They got a lot of hate this off-season too, didn't they?
They did, because we didn't really see them make too many amazing signings who have turned out to be really good. Still a fair bit of inconsistency.
I think that can be expected, though, when you go from 16th to 5th.
Yeah, and the thing is, people say to me, "Oh, you're an Eels hater, how inconsistent." Well, yes, they are where they are. However, they're a win-loss team, and most mainstream media outlets will even tell you that. That's why they might have a bit of an issue come the finals. Even if they finish around Manly, come finals, they're a team I can see maybe getting into a bit of trouble. Like I don't know about you, I could feasibly see on their day any of the other 3 bottom 4 sides beating them, as in the bottom 4 sides of the 8. I could.
Definitely. But when you match those other ones up against Roosters and Storm, then the answer becomes pretty easy, right, as to who you have. Yeah. Losers. Let's go on to our losers. Now, obviously, guys, you always have to be sensitive when you say stuff like this because people get so upset. We don't literally mean you losers. We're not putting big fat L's up right here.
I am. Sorry.
Yeah, I was as well, but figuratively, we're not. We're talking about teams that we thought would do better, but they ended up losing. I'm going to say the Knights. Now, I need to be particular in this because I have wrote, what's the word there? Is it wrote or written? I don't even know. I should learn that. Written. I did written an article.
Oh, wait. Now it's wrote. Sorry, I thought you were talking in different. Anyway, this isn't the set of 6 grammar podcast. This is a set of 6 podcasts.
And I need to find this one because there's a very interesting stat contained in it. All right, here we go, guys. The Knights this year, they've lost 12 games with a margin of 12.5. Pretty, not too much of a stat there. 9 of those 12 have been 8 points or less. 7 of those were like 4 or less, or 6 of those were 4 or less.
Yeah.
They are my losers because they are so reliant on Pearce and Ponga. If they don't step up to the plate for a game and play exceptionally, then they lose tight margins. Yep. They need a genuine 6, and I think that could be Connor Watson next year, but a genuine 6 that can challenge the defensive line and give Pearce and Ponga just a little bit more to work with. Because as we've seen this year, guys, 9 losses by 8 or less. You reverse those 9 losses, that's 18 points. And where are they currently on the ladder? Because I'd have to imagine that would have them as a top 4 side. So that's 18 points, guys, if they reverse those 8 points losses or less. They're currently on they're currently on 18 points. That puts them equal with the Melbourne Storm in first. If they turn those 9 close losses around.
Yeah.
They are my losers because they came so close to being a genuine contender this year. But they're just not there yet.
Now, I've also got them as a loser. However, I like going in list order, and I've got them second, spoiler alert, so I'll go on first. The Brisbane Broncos. Okay. Now, personally for me, hey, I saw this coming. I'm not trying to bag out the Broncos, but I'm just proud of myself for being able to pick this one. Well, they currently sit 8th, actually. But, okay, hear me out. Here's why they're my losers. A lot of people expected them to be a top 4 side, right? A lot of people did. I know you had them out of your...
I had them at 9th.
Did you? Had them yeah, see, we both sort of saw, hang on, there's more to it than just, oh, look, young potential stars going to take us to the premiership. Yeah, there is a lot of implications around that, and we definitely found that out this season. There's too many sheep and not enough shepherds, right? There are too many young, unexperienced guys, and not enough leaders in that squad. We just look at their front row. There's obviously a lot of raw potential and raw talent, but eventually when they play together more, they'll eventually become good. But the way you speed up that process is by having a real leader there to guide them.
Absolutely.
Look at the Brisbane Broncos halves. Start of the year, we had Nicarima and Milford. Milford has now proven he's better as a fullback. Nicarima has proven, he can't play alongside another sort of ball-running half and sort of another half. And they're experienced to an extent, but they're not, an experienced half. Dearden's come in, who I think will be the half for next season for Brisbane. I can't see Turpin staying in that role.
No.
He's come in. They've moved Boyd into the halves, who isn't a half.
No, 1 metre for one run would show that.
Yeah, and hasn't been amazing this season at all. And he's supposed to be one of those leaders. If the leader isn't playing well, that's a whole other issue. All I'm saying is for 2020, Brisbane need, and I'm not talking about a star. I'm not talking about a superstar player who would usually go to Brisbane. They need an experienced half to partner Tom Dearden. If they do that, I possibly have them in the 8 for 2020. They are currently sitting 8th, but the overwhelming opinion I'm seeing online from people is that they won't make the finals, and I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree as well. Look, they lost over 1,000 games experience this year by releasing names like Mcguire, Kahu, Nicarima, Thaiday retired, Corbin Sims left, James Roberts left. These are just off the top of my head, guys. They lost so much experience, which you can't lose. Over 1,000 games in a season and still be a top 8 side. The Broncos have always been a fantastic club, so they have defied those odds to an extent. However, when they drew with the Warriors Oz, their luck run out. For and against, they will be better than teams up to maybe 6th. But that one loss and only taking the 1 point there, I predict will kick them out. I think they'll sit on 9th, 1 point short of the finals, which is disappointing. They are my second loser, by the way. We'll go on to your third loser. Who have you got for your third?
Well, I'm only up to my second.
Are you? Okay, you go on your second.
The Newcastle Knights. So I'll say my little piece on Newcastle. Sorry, I sound like Darren Lockyer.
Locky.
You said mainly everything. The one thing I sort of want to emphasise is the biggest reason, I think, why Newcastle went on their big winning run in the middle of the season, but also the reason why they didn't play well at the start of the season and at the end of the season, is the reliance on individual brilliance from Mitchell Pearce. Yep. And I think, Matty John's right on his show. Some people give him a little bit of flack for being a bit biased towards Newcastle, but it's more of a relaxed show. He can sort of be, more supportive of his team, right? But even he came out and said they're just too reliant on Mitchell Pearce, which they are. When Mitchell Pearce is playing well, they lift and they play well. When Mitchell Pearce is playing poorly, which he did at the start of the season and probably has now,
yep,
they've dropped off. It's not even a reliance on Ponga either. To a little bit of an extent there is, but I'd say it's mainly on Mitchell Pearce because his form is sort of correlated with the form of the side. They need to, and they really need to be coached this in the 2020 off season. How to back themselves a bit. You have players like David Clemmer in that side who are a bit reliant on Pearce. Obviously, a forward is going to be relying on their half, in a game, yes, but I'm talking more in terms of influence. David Clemmer can be part of that influence, getting the team going forward.
Definitely.
There are other players in that side who have enough star power to really step up and they don't have to rely on one player. This isn't Mitchell Pearce's fault. I'd say it's the majority, it's like the rest of the team's fault for relying on him. It's sort of what the Titans have tried to do to an extent this season in some games with the likes of an AJ Brimson, waiting for his individual brilliance and not taking some ownership. Obviously, to the Titans, that they're currently sitting last, they're a lot worse off. And he's a more inexperienced player, but it's happening at Newcastle as well. And yes, while Pearce can pull out, maybe 5 man of the match performances in a row, I don't know about you, but for a full 25 rounds. So that's what I've got to say about
you. You can't sustain that physically and mentally.
Take some ownership. Yeah,
absolutely. My third loser is the Dragons. They were expected to do well this year. They were expected to be a top 8 side easily. My initial predicted ladder, which was too early, I think I did it in about November or December, I had them at 13th, and everyone said, you're crazy. Dragons are a top 8 side. They'll easily be top 8. Who was it? Buzz Rothfield tipped them to win the premiership this year. They haven't done anything. What a hugely disappointing year for Saints fans. You had 2 great halves there. The Queensland Maroons, what was the Queensland Maroons halfback, the England international 5'8", and you signed the Queensland Maroons now 5'8" Corey Norman. And, when you look at that team, Oz, that is a top 8 team. Definitely.
On paper.
Definitely it is on paper. I don't have too many reasons. It's just been disappointing to watch them play because we expected a lot more. Who's your last loser of 2019?
Believe it or not, it is the St. George Illawarra Dragons.
We had the same 3 losers, didn't we?
We had the same 3 losers. Did
we have the same 3 winners? No, who was your... I had Storm.
I had the Eels and you had the Storm. But right. You said you had the Eels. We've got the same brain. Anyway, look, with the Dragons, I had them 5th, I think, to start the year. Mm-hmm. On paper, now... Forgive me for sort of trying to give Buzz Rothfield an excuse, I guess. I can, although I definitely do not agree with it. I could sort of see where Buzz Rothfield was coming from at the start of the season, tipping the Dragons to win the competition. Because on paper, you look at them, do they have... Now, I could be wrong. I think they have the most representative players out of any team. So going off of that, on paper, they should win the premiership. You start thinking about influence, though. You start thinking about, things that happen within a game. You instantly think of Melbourne or a Sydney or a South Sydney. But, I mean, a lot of people have asked me throughout the season, what's going wrong with the Dragons? What can they do better? And honestly, it is arguably the hardest 2 questions I've been asked all year. Because what can you do when you have a side like that has proven they can play well before? What do you do? I
think potentially it really highlights how important confidence is in rugby league.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right, there are our winners and losers, guys. We got one more question here. Tracking very nicely. We want to go 12 minutes apiece. We're at 48 minutes, so we've done that exactly. Paul Kent yesterday, come out and said, I won't read you the exact quote because I'll probably punch my computer because it was so dumb, but part of it. At some point, there has just got to be an understanding that this Mad Monday concept is stupid. It causes more trouble than it's worth, and people are out there pumping the argument that after a season of so much dedication and sacrifice, they are entitled to blow their steam off at the end of the year, which is rubbish. Okay, Paul, for starters, people are out there pumping the notion that they are entitled to blow off their steam. Are you saying they're not? Are you telling me that these human beings are not entitled to have a day off like you are?
Yeah, and you know what, to refute that, right? This is their job, right? This is how many, Christmas parties do we see for 9 to 5 people? That's their sort of Mad Monday,
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Jenny got a bit wild last year, Roz. She had too many red wines, Jenny did. So we're banning the Christmas party across Australia. There will be no more Christmas parties. And at your Christmas party last year, Oz, we set up in balconies with our cameraman. We bought apartments higher than where you were drinking at a private pub. We bought those apartments so we could set up cameras to capture you and your friends doing whatever the hell you want, which was, I mean, a little bit silly, but who doesn't love Sweet Caroline? It is a banger. So no hard feelings towards Adam Elliott there. But Paul Kent, the fucking company you work for, the Daily Telegraph, bought apartments above so you could capture photos of the Bulldogs Mad Monday, and now you've got a problem with it. But you didn't have a problem with it when you were getting your pictures to sell the paper. Now it's an issue. This guy is so out of touch with the general populace that I don't know how he has a job. I don't. The only thing I can honestly think of is he knows you will share it on your page. I will share it on my page. Fox League will talk about it. The Daily Telegraph might run a quote tomorrow. Everyone's going to talk about how much of an idiot this guy is. And I guess any exposure is good exposure, perhaps. But at the end of the day, this guy has now said anything positive about rugby league for a very, very long time. We are 1 month out from the most closely contested finals race we've had in years. Last year, we knew the top 8. It was boring. Whatever. Talk about whatever you want in your paper. Fair enough. This year, anyone can make the top 8. 6 to about 12th can all still make it. It's exciting. Let's put it in the paper. Let's talk about it. Let's break down who they're versing, where the games are at, which players need to step up, some key matchups, Sherry versus Naden, just for an example, when the Panthers take on the Sharks, all this exciting stuff we can do. But we go down the negative road and we put a photo on the front page of Sean Lane from, 6 to 8 months ago, and we run with that.
And he swerves into oncoming traffic to get away from the media.
And if that doesn't say what the media are like these days,
and guess
what the hell does?
And guess what? They took photos of it happening and then posted it online.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, you just can't get a break if you're a player these days. And I'll read your message. Obviously, I won't name this player. But this is a message I got today from a NRL player. He said, I rate this so much, and for what you do behind the scenes and on the front line. You're saying what we can't say, and we need more people like you in our game. I said, look, 100%, bro, it sucks that you guys can't say the truth, because it does give the media the upper hand to influence and twist the general populace, their opinion. Because the players are relying on sponsors and what the club says they can and can't do, they can't come out and defend themselves. So the media instantly has the upper hand in twisting our opinions. I said, if sponsors and clubs permitted you guys to come out and say the truth or exactly what you wanted, rugby league would be an entirely different sport. Do you honestly think Paul Kent would, pick on players like he does? Gordon Tallis would have said Josh Dugan needs to retire. If players could turn around and say the truth and say what they want.
Yeah.
It's absolutely crazy. But the notion, to go back to the original point, the notion to say that Mad Monday should be banned because one person did wrong is completely wrong. It's like saying every single Muslim is a terrorist because a few of them have been terrorists. Every single Catholic is a murderer because they murdered people however long ago.
In the Crusades.
Come on,
back in the 100s or whatever it was.
It's you know what I mean? It's ridiculous to label every single NRL player because a couple had a little bit of a wild time to Sweet Caroline. Yeah.
Look, with the whole Mad Monday thing, I don't agree with Paul Kent. I agree with the notion that I'm not saying get rid of Mad Monday. There has to be some ramifications because yes, while the media does buy apartments to capture players doing stupid things, in essence, players do, and not everyone, of course, but players do still do stupid things. So we need to figure out, and I don't know, some ramifications to, I don't think we're going to snuff it out completely, but to, make it less of an issue. Mm-hmm. What I definitely disagree with, though, is getting rid of Mad Monday, because think about it. You get rid of Mad Monday, and sorry, my dad's just waving to me there. He's going out. Sorry, I was got a bit distracted. Anyway, back to my point. If we get rid of it completely, that's even worse. That's because players are just going to go out anyway and, have a drink at the end of the season. And again, I'm talking about a very small minority. A very small minority will get together and do something illegal. It'll end up even worse. we'll end up with even more issues because, Mad Monday, it's the team coming together. The coach is usually there for the majority of the time. The staff, if you
how can they ban it anyway? How would that even work? Do you think that could?
Yeah, because they can ban it, right? Any official parties and that, but then they can't stop. They can't stop a group of players going out and getting on the drink on their own, which is even worse, I'd say, because then the risk is even because you don't have a coach there or any of the staff to say, "Come on, guys, we need to relax a bit now." There's no mediation whatsoever. At least with Mad Monday, yes, we still get some stupid things that happen. Sweet Caroline, although it is a banger, it was a bit of a silly thing to do, right? At least that's in a controlled environment, right? That was still in a controlled environment. However, the Daily Telegraph's up in the apartment, in the trees, filming it.
Yeah.
That was the main issue there. What if that wasn't a Mad Monday thing and Adam Elliott was not in a private room? And I don't think he would do this, but for example, if a player was, in the pub and just stripped naked and walked out on the street, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure I don't think he would have, but I'm sure if Adam Elliott tried to do that, maybe Dean Pay would go over or someone and say, yeah, maybe come back inside. Whereas, there's just you're just making the situation worse by banning it. We still need to have a day where players can blow off steam, etc. Have a day like that, and I personally don't know, as I said, but we do need to figure out some ramifications, and we do need to police it a bit better. But
I agree with that. I agree. We do need to police it a little bit better, but the entire event should not be cancelled because these are human beings. They're entitled to a day off. They're entitled to get on the drink with their friends without all of us judging them for just one day of the year at least.
Here's one rule. You're only allowed to take your shirt off to Sweet Caroline. How about
Perfect rule.
Compromise.
Just the shirt. Let's compromise, meet in the middle. Just the shirt. Only when the chorus drops. Guys, that is the set of 6 podcast for round 22. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Usually we plug our own Instagrams, Facebooks at the end here, guys, but we really want to focus on we're pointing down for once. We really want to focus on the Set of 6 podcast page, guys. Instagram and Facebook, if you didn't pause it at the start, head over now at the end of this podcast, guys. Purely interactive, fun content directly on your news feed. And we got big plans, and we think you guys will enjoy it. We want you to be a part of the journey with us, guys. So if you enjoyed the podcast, feel free to put on your Instagram story. We'll reshare it to our Instagrams for you. Tell a friend. Tell a friend, guys. If you're here still, you enjoyed it, let a friend know. Hey, there's these 2 idiots, and you might actually listen to what they have to say and enjoy it because I did. Or have a laugh at these 2 larrikins. They know nothing. Whatever you want, just tell someone, guys. Get the Set of 6 podcast out there. Make the Set of 6 podcast great again, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name's Clarky. Oz,